Anime, by definition, is a form of escapism, a means of detaching ourselves from the weight of our lives and finding respite in the world of fiction. But there is a specific genre that exists purely for comfort and relaxation that sets it apart from other genres. If you've been in the anime community for a while, you've probably heard of the term Iyashikei, but for those of you who don't know, it basically translates to a healing or calming type of anime or manga. It's a story that does away with the flashy action, gripping drama, heartfelt romance, and over-the-top comedy of the mainstream in order to highlight the little things in life. In many ways, it fits the definition of a slice of life, and one could argue that Iyashikei is just another word for a slice of life. But in my opinion, there is a distinction between the two, and while most Iyashikei stories are slices of life, not all slices of life are Iyashikei. And to explain my thought process behind these claims, I wanted to take a look at one of the more well-received Iyashikei stories that we've had in the past few years, Yuru Camp. So while all forms of literature and media are by definition escapism, a lot of the stories you find in fiction have at least some emphasis on the gritty and painful aspects of life in an attempt to make the stories more grounded, relatable, and moving. These are usually stories that will have a longer lasting impact in our minds, as the struggles that the characters go through will either inspire us, or at the very least, evoke a great amount of emotion within us. Deadly war stories might bring about thoughts of loss and pain, building attachments between the characters and the viewers so that we can root for a happy ending, just as we are rooting for happy endings in our own world. A good drama story not only finds value in allowing the viewers to think through the situations that the characters are having to think through, it also often reflects the interpersonal relationships and struggles that we will have to go through in our day-to-day lives, albeit often exaggerated for the sense of entertainment. These types of stories are often very popular and memorable because of their means to evoke raw emotion out of an audience, telling fictional stories that are often over-exaggerated but are simultaneously mirrors of our own world, allowing viewers to find a sense of identity between what they are experiencing in the real world and what they are experiencing through imagination. But there is one thing that connects all these different types of genres and that makes them so moving, is that at their core they deal with a very difficult part of life. War stories involve death and destruction, losing close friends and family members, witnessing widespread devastation that most of us are fortunate enough not to witness, but many are unfortunately forced to live with. Drama stories may not have overbearing, widespread consequences, but they do touch on one of the most common forms of stress in one's day-to-day life. And of course there do exist comedic slice-of-life stories, but there usually is an underlying sense of unease or conflict that will eventually come up as the plot progresses. And sometimes the comedy itself is even based on these darker subjects. And while I don't want to discount these genres, they only go so far in allowing us to escape the anxieties of the real world. Simultaneously, and almost paradoxically, there is a point in these kinds of stories that serves as a hard boundary between the real world and the world of fiction. Many things are over-exaggerated for the purpose of impact or entertainment. And while we are briefly allowed to escape into these worlds of fiction and imagination, it hurts just a little bit to know that we will eventually have to return to our normal, mundane, and stressful world. Iyashikei's stories purposely downplay those painful aspects in order to act as pure, wholesome escapism. There's not much of an iceberg to these shows, and I don't say that to belittle them or say that they're lesser in quality because of their simplicity. Instead, I'm actually saying that they are powerful because of their simplicity. A lot of Iyashikei stories are told through slow-paced, mundane scenarios, and while they might not be the most realistic by virtue of muting common worries and struggles, sometimes one of the best ways to de-stress is just to have something actually go according to plan. These are stories grounded in reality. These aren't tales of power fantasy, wish fulfillment, or oversaturated emotion. These are just depictions of normal people going about normal lives. In the case of Yuru Camp, it's just a story about friends going camping. And by virtue of its setting, the show also evokes another form of tranquility in nature. Finding peace through nature is certainly cliché, but the natural world is still a perfect place to disconnect from the hustle and bustle of a day in the modern world. Instead of worrying about deadlines, meetings, homework, taxes, and then trying to forget about all that by watching television or drinking, By going out into the wilderness, you can simply just relax and listen to the leaves fluttering in the wind. No matter who you are, there is a special comfort in returning to our roots in the outside world. And the beauty of fiction is that we can do this without having to actually go out there and worry about weather and spiders and all the other scary things that come with camping. Furthermore, camping is the perfect demonstration of that concept I mentioned earlier about slowing down and relaxing. And a good example of how powerful this concept is just by watching episode 1. The entirety of it takes place in just a single night, and its emotional climax is just getting to look up at Mount Fuji with Rin and Nadeshiko. The entirety of the show follows a similar pattern, highlighting the little things in life, finding happiness in a shared love of nature, and taking time for yourself in order to think about things, escape from homework, or even just to chill by a campfire. What we as viewers will subconsciously take away from this is not only a bit of relaxation, it also sneakily gets us to appreciate the subtleties of the outside world. Oftentimes we prioritize ourselves on the big events in life, overlooking the familiar comforts that life has to offer. A lot of us want to experience something different in life, so we turn to the realm of fiction to find it. But in doing so, we often expose ourselves to stories of overwhelming emotion. Yuru Camp is powerful not by means of impact or excitement. Instead, it's powerful just by being comfy. And sometimes, that's all that matters.